Welcome back to episode 22 of the Sharin Jesus podcast. I'm your host, Parker Abear. But next week, we'll have a different host. Tune in to see who that'll be. So, question right off the top. Football, NFL has happened.
The Broncos won. Yes, the Broncos finally won. We're going to the Super Bowl, baby.
Man.
So we know who's happy, who's sad. Anybody sad?
Every blind squirrel.
The Chiefs cheated to win.
The Chiefs needed the Swifties.
Uh-oh. What happened?
Boy, he slid down instead of scoring a touchdown.
Yeah,
Kicked a field goal to win.
It was actually football IQ 1000. I mean,
Yep.
Oh, wow. I didn't see
because
the
he
highlights.
slid right before he scored and went out of bounds and left the clock running, and they just...
He got the first down inside the 5. Then he slid to not score the touchdown and keep the clock running.
Yeah.
That's IQ.
Oh, so smart.
It was very genius.
I've seen that done before, and it's just being aware the time element game, what the clock is, your situation.
Right.
It was the same thing Jerick McKinnon did last year in the Super Bowl. He could have scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. He
minute.
surrendered himself so that the clock keeps running.
Talking about sliding, do y'all remember the guy from Pitt who, it was either last year or the year before last, quarterback takes off running across the field, fake slides, goes down.
Oh, it's Kyle Pitts.
Yeah. A guy was coming to tackle him, and he stands back up and goes on to score the touchdown.
Is that right?
Yes, they actually
Wow.
made that move illegal now.
Interesting.
But since y'all went to NFL August Straight College, there were no Louisiana teams except my alma mater. Go Louisiana Christian University Wildcats. They were the only college team that won their football this weekend.
Oh,
There you
wow.
go.
My alma mater, NAIA school. LSU lost, UL lost, Northwestern, Southern.
Dude, that LSU Ole Miss game was a good game to watch.
ULL lost.
If you're
ULL lost.
if you're not an LSU fan.
There is that.
Yeah, that was not fun to watch. But anyways, I'm glad we got our football talk out of the way. We'll probably talk more in the office about it later. But so we'll just jump right into it. Who is your spiritual role model other than Jesus?
Are we talking celebrity?
It can be celebrity. It can be Bible character, or not character, real person. But spiritual role model.
Oh, mine's easy.
I've been able to think about it, so I know my answer, but I'll go first. Mine's probably David. Because, I mean, the majority of what he wrote was all songs, and he sung those songs during times of his trouble. So it just shows to prove that worship is powerful. Even though the modality of what we do in worship is different, the concept is the same. That's a big word right there, modality.
Yeah, and a good use of the word. That's a good one in your context for sure. And I'd have to have, if I chose Bible character, it would, besides Jesus, as you said, he's all of our role models. It'd definitely be Paul. You know, and a lot of people don't realize he was a broken vessel. He even called himself the chief of sinners, meaning that, and even the thorn in the flesh, which I think was different than his, the reason he said it, why am I the chiefest of sinners? Because I persecuted the church. And so he mentioned that in one of his letters. And but he also struggled with that thorn in the flesh. So he had a lot of inner struggles, which he also revealed in Romans. He said the things I want to do, I don't do, and the things I don't want to do, I do. So I relate a lot to that. Just inner. I struggle with priorities. I struggle with okay, am I making all the right best decisions? And so. But Paul, he went back, you know, my life verse is Philippians 1:21, for me to live as Christ and to die as gain, meaning that this life is temporary, number one, and it needs to be about Jesus and while I'm breathing. and because in the end, of course, it'll all be about him. So right off the top of my head, that using a Bible example, and as far as an earthly example, I've got a lot of guys I turn to for, like you've said before, your black hole friends, and having those, and those are a treasure to have. People you can just visit and talk with.
Well, I'll say I'm just going to go with an earthly guy. He's pretty close to me, pretty close friend, Bo Walker. He's faced a lot of adversity in different seasons in his life, and I've never met another person that's been able to spiritually stay true to what the Lord is calling him to, and spiritually stay positive in the face of a lot of the adversity that he's faced. Whereas, we joke at this table, I call myself a realist. Brother Michael calls myself a pessimist, in denial.
And I understand your natural wiring, but I have seen you start to look at more, to me, my perspective, the more positive perspectives in several things that pop up.
I'm trying, and it's a slow process, but Bo Walker, he stays positive through it all, and even through their current season. And I'm not going to get into that. That's not my business. But even in their current season, it's not the easiest to deal with, and yet he's still one of the most positive people that I know. So
Joy is a choice.
yeah.
John 10:10.
Is joy a choice or is it a lifestyle?
Joy is a choice. I believe joy is a choice.
All right. I'll go with that.
Yeah, it can become a play on words. I really believe it's a fruit of the Spirit,
Right.
and it's there as part of our spiritual walk. There are things that affect that joy for sure. Circumstance, sin, personal choices, but it's a definite fruit of the Spirit. Yeah.
I would agree with that, because the fruit of the Spirit, it's just that, it's the fruit of the Spirit. It's not something we produce naturally.
Good.
Kind of like positivity and negativity is something that we can produce and choose to produce. But the fruit of the Spirit, it belongs to the Spirit. So if you're not living in the Spirit,
Right.
you're not going to experience these things because you're not
Right.
there.
You got to be walking in the Spirit for those things to be reality.
That's right.
Let me ask y'all this as far as that. I was just thinking about, spiritual mentors. Through the years, I've found my spiritual mentors, people I go to, like you, whether you call it a black hole friend or somebody that I've seen that change in my life. Like right now, if I were to go talk to somebody that I said, okay, I can go talk to them about ministry and decisions, and one name that pops up in my mind is a preacher friend of mine by the name, and we support him as a missionary, by the name of Doug Clements. And he lives in Malvern, and he's been a real encourager to me. But I've noticed that person has changed in different years of my life.
Oh, yeah.
Have you found that?
Oh, yeah. Because life circumstances take you away from, and that you have different seasons in your life and your ministry where the people that you're rubbing up against are going to speak into that season more readily or more pointedly than somebody that spoke to you in the past. The guy that made a huge impact on my life was my student pastor whenever I was 14, 15, 16 years old. And then some dynamics at our church changed, and so he was no longer our student pastor, and that relationship changed because of accessibility. I wasn't able to spend the time with him that I was able to spend before. And so that relationship changed, and then a different relationship came about. And then I was in college, and so the guys that I spent time with in college, those relationships developed. And then it was going to seminary, and in seminary meeting Nick Kendall. And Nick Kendall's a guy that's, my age, but somebody that I can call right now and say, this is the deepest hurt that's going on. And he could go, what do you need? And I think I could call Dan Roy, that student pastor from 14, 15, 16, and say, hey, Dan, this is what's going on. And he would go, what do you need? So I think in times and seasons, they change because of accessibility and that sort of thing, but it doesn't change necessarily that relationship. Mm-hmm. So even now, most recently, I would say Bob Monclova in Albuquerque, retired pastor that was a part of our church, and Bob and I got together on the regular, and I can call Bob right now and say, hey, Bob, here's my deepest hurt. And he go, what do you need? And he even preached last year at a church in Kentucky, and on his way back from Kentucky to Albuquerque, stayed the night with us. And we sat around our kitchen table till, oh my goodness, like 1, 2, 3 in the morning, because that relationship picked right back up. Nick Kendall and I, we've been in contact for years, for these last 30 years. And he's planning a trip to come see us and just spend a couple days and just hang out. And so it changes because of accessibility, but I don't think that the depth of those relationships change because you've shared so much. Because of the depth, we can lock eyes with one another, and it picks up right where it left off. Mm. And that's the beauty of that type of relationship.
Yeah, I even thankfully have had that in every church I've ever pastored. There are, certain people that you just, like you said, you do life with, and you develop a relationship that you can go back, call them. You may not have spoken for a while. Just call them up, say, hey, I'm broke down in Tennessee. Can you come help?
Right.
Yep, I'll come help, or I'll find somebody I know there.
Right.
And then you get together and you just pick right back up.
Well, and it's not even just that. It's, hey, Ashley and I are going through stuff. Okay, how can I pray for you? Mm-hmm. Hey, knucklehead, why are you making those choices? You're in that situation with Ashley because you've made these choices, and that's where it hurts. And it goes back to Parker started with biblical hero, and I don't know that he's the biblical hero, but one of the most obscure guys that I like in Scripture is a guy named Hushai. And the reference that you see to Hushai is in the story of David, and late in David's life, it says, there's a passage, and I forget where it is, but it talks about this guy was in charge of David's camels. This guy was in charge of David's donkeys. This guy was in charge of David's sheep. And then it says Hushai the Archite was the king's friend. That's the only way it describes him. Hushai the Archite was the king's friend. And then you read about when Absalom revolts against David. David flees Jerusalem, and they're on the Mount of Olives. And Hushai the Archite is already on the Mount of Olives, ripped his clothes and is weeping, ashes on his head, the sign of deep, grievous mourning in the Jewish culture. And David looks at him and goes, dude, I can't take you with me. You're too emotional. Go back in the city and thwart all of the counsel that Ahithophel is about to give Absalom. And dude gets dressed and goes back into the city. And David flees. Hushai the Archite was the king's friend. And that's what your friends should do. They should put their lives on the line. And so Hushai the Archite goes back in, and Absalom has rounded up all of his counselors, and he says, what should we do? And they're all like, let's go get David right now. And Hushai goes, no. Let's wait. He's an old man. He's going to be tired. We'll catch him in the morning. No big deal. But that counsel is what Absalom goes with, and because of Hushai the Archite, the king's friend, David's able to get away. And we need friends like that will put their lives on the line for us. that will risk for us because we are risking for them as well.
That's cool. Neat, obscure fellows. I like that. Like Benaiah, and one of David's chief men. Just, of course, neat story. Fella tackle a lion in a pit on a snowy day.
That's good.
It's all really good answers, everyone.
That's really good.
So, with this whole sticking in the topic of being aware of things that you aspire to and you look towards, I want to ask, because me and Maddie were talking about this on the way home. I was starting to think of questions, and I was like, this is kind of an interesting one. When are you most aware of God's presence? And like, this is going to sound silly, but like whenever you see something in nature that's beautiful, I think is that one for me. Whenever I'm just driving down the road and I'm just listening to worship music and singing like no one can hear me, and it's just the freedom that I feel whenever I am just worshiping on my own, because it's it's a song like what a friend we have in Jesus, and that's how our relationship should be. It's just like, I'm just here hanging out with the Lord and just worshiping freely, and is like He's here with me. And then like whenever sunrises are better than sunsets, for me at least. There's nothing like waking up. Whenever I worked at Channel 7, nothing like waking up at 2:30 a.m., getting to work at 3, and I get to pan the cameras in the mountains to see the sunrise. Oh, it's so beautiful. Even though it's through a camera that's not that great of quality, it's something about a sunrise that's just so beautiful that God created.
Anytime I see a big, huge scene, mountains, storms, matter of fact, where we used to live down in South Arkansas, especially on the edge of the Delta, everything's real flat there in Hamburg, and you can see a long ways, and you can drive out to certain fields. And have y'all ever seen those storms where the lightning just it's not coming down, but it's just staying in the clouds?
Mm-hmm.
And you can see a long ways. And I think about those scenes like that, or sunrises, sunsets, mountains, those storm scenes. I'm reminded of His presence. But I was just thinking about those times that you talked about. I've had those moments in the vehicle traveling where God's presence is just, it's palpable. It's almost tangible. And I'm like, I don't deserve this. Every time I have that happen, I feel unworthy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a mixture of fear and thank you for allowing me to feel. How do you describe that feeling? That's tough. When you sense His presence, just literally.
I think for me, it's almost a reverence, like that. I'm so thankful I get to be here in this moment, but also, like, why me? I think that's I don't know. It's kind of a weird. It's hard to explain. Like, why do I get to experience this? But in spite of that, thank you.
There was another time that I had a privilege. When I first got here as pastor at Sharin Baptist Church, I was still just drinking out of a fire hose and information overload. There was a church member passing away by the name of Ray Grady, and his daughter and granddaughter go over to Holland Chapel, and he was in a hospice room, and they had called the family in. I just happened to be there when the family was coming in, I was making a regular visit in the hospice, and they said it's getting really close. And his daughter and granddaughter have beautiful voices, and Debbie Tully and Julie Gunter are their names. And I just backed into a corner because I was watching this family have an intimate moment with their dad and grandfather, and they literally sang him into heaven.
Sweet.
I was like, I wasn't that close to them because I haven't had the time.
Right.
And I just had tears flowing down my cheek. I said, oh my, I could literally sense, don't know if I'm accurate or not, I felt like when his spirit left the room, it was imagining something. I've felt that before, I've witnessed that before, and it was a similar feeling all over again whenever he passed away while they were singing to him. And those are
powerful moments.
wow.
Yeah.
And there's a few other church members and even a couple of family members that were something similar like that. There wasn't a singing, but there were where I think God gives us grace, and His presence is made more whenever we're facing the loss of something like that. Somebody's leaving this world.
I've had those similar moments in the car. I used to work for FedEx and CalArt. Did a lot of delivering, a lot of driving, because I wasn't necessarily local here in Central Arkansas. I was usually Northern Arkansas, those areas where you've got 20, 30 minutes between stops. It's just land and forest between house to house. And so you have those moments in the car where it's just you, the open road, and a lot of time to listen. You got worship going on in the back. For me, it was podcasts and listening to messages from different speakers and and pastors from different churches and stuff like that, and just listening to what the Lord was impressing on your heart. But I think all of us at this table agree, I've experienced the presence of God more times in moments of service than I have anywhere else, where I may be serving someone that doesn't have the things that I have, and it's a reality check of God showing me, hey, look at the things that I've blessed you with. Look at the things that the opportunities that I've given you, and it's kind of that, that reality check where you're like, dude, I take so much for granted in my life. Like when we went to the Yucatan, and it was on a family vacation, family cruise, and we get there, and you go into the dock, and literally we're coming off of the ship. And there's, I don't know if they were cartel, if they were police, what, they were unmarked, but they're walking around in the back of Jeeps, in the back of cars, carrying automatic weapons all over the dock. And then you go into the tourist town, and they're trying to get you for $1, and it's broken stone roads. And we got into this van, and we get on their highway system, which compared to our highway system it's rough. But we go through this $1 billion city, skyscrapers, lights, I mean, anything and everything you would think a $1 billion city would have. And 2 minutes outside of that city limits, it was a third world country. And we drive into this little village, and these people are wanting to feed us lunch with their food, and they're showing us their property. They didn't have doors or windows. It was a cinder block home where their sleeping was a hammock in their living room going wall to wall at night, and then hanging it back up on the wall during the day. And it's in moments like that where you really experience God's presence, and you're like, gosh, I'm so thankful for the things that I have. And so I think for me, and I really get emotional. I'm an emotional guy, passionate, very, very passionate. And so like in those moments of service, like I can just feel the emotions of God in that moment, where this is what it's about. It's not about storing up earthly treasures or the flashy cars, the flashy boats, the flashy homes, the flashy shoes, clothing. I mean, it's about serving others. And so I feel like everybody experiences God differently and whatnot, but we can all agree that when you serve others, the presence of God is there.
Right.
So, yep.
Oh, you're looking at me,
Sir Kyle.
Man, I tell you what,
It's
we talk
the
about
questions an overload.
Well, for me, and it's kind of funny you talk about this because last night in Life Group, Colton Higgins was talking about how much he experiences God just being outside, that God created him to be outside. And we were just talking about that. And I've, as everybody's been sharing, I've been reflecting back to, I go back to our time in New Mexico, and we had some favorite hikes that you just walk up and you see the grandeur of God, and you just go, oh my, how this is, it's like I think of like one of our favorite hikes was Namby Lake, which it's a lake at 11,000 feet north of Santa Fe. You start at where Ski Santa Fe is, and you go back up in there, and you get up to 11,000 feet, and it's just this bowl of rock face all the way around. But then the lake is so crystal clear, you can see the bottom of the lake from the shore, and it's just a massive, massive lake. You hike all the way up there, and you're standing on the edge of this thing, and you're going, nobody knows this is up here. I mean, obviously there's trails up there, so people do know that it's up there, but it's like you get up there and this is like, all right, God, let's just hang out. And you sit down and you throw up your little hammocks, and the boys and I are eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and we're just talking about God. And I think about, I don't know how many times we would hike the Jemez Wilderness, and you get back up in the Jemez, and there's these hot springs, just natural hot springs, and you take off your boots and your shirt and everything, and you climb in the hot springs, and there's these little itty bitty fish that eat all the bacteria and the dead skin off of your feet, and it's just awesome. And you're just sitting there, and you're talking to your boys about God, and I think about all of the different times that the boys and I have gone and done, and we're just out there, and it's just another opportunity where we go, look at what God did. And if you've never been to the Grand Canyon, you go to the Grand Canyon, you stand on the rim, and you look at it, and you go, wow, this is awesome. You talked about sunrises. For us in New Mexico, I could stand in my backyard and see 3 mountains. And every day when the sun goes down in the west and it hits the Sandia Peak, it turns the mountain pink.
Wow.
Which is why it's called Sandia, because that's a native word meaning watermelon. It's a watermelon mountain, and it turns pink every night. So for us, sundown was, all right, everybody outside, and we just wait. And when the sun got to a certain point every day, that mountain turns pink. And it's just, wow. It's just, you go, wow, that's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
Nature is beautiful.
Oh,
the Lord is good.
Yes,
that's right.
Absolutely.
And that is episode 22 in the books. Thank you so much for enjoying with us.
Love you guys.
Thank you.